All right, welcome to the Sci-Fi Case Project. So in this tutorial, I'm going to go over my thinking on what kind of sci-fi case I might want to make, and perhaps start out the sort of base structure of it. Basically, first step is Google. Find any examples on the internet that you might like. This is an actual case I thought was really cool, especially the edge lines here. But as I click through here, you can see different examples of different sort of cases. Some that are, really exaggerated kind of sci-fi, and others that look a little bit more practical in terms of like a military use, and some that might actually look like a CD player or something. I kind of felt like this one definitely reminds me of a CD player, and this one kind of reminds me of a little bit of a toolbox or art box even. So this one's definitely more kind of cool sci-fi and a more military, almost like a bomb kind of box or something. So there's some different cases, different examples. I like this one. It has a different kind of shape, so we might consider that. Even though sort of heading towards a more rectangular kind of structure. But here's just, just different examples on the internet. And so what I suggest doing with this project is basically in Photoshop, basically showing the things you like. And so I kind of drew the one that I thought had a lot of the key features I did like overall. Like this one has a lot of components I like, the different levels. It has a handle, it has round and sort of more square kind of parts. And then I kind of looked at different examples, what things I really drew upon and really like this one. If I just remove the mask temporarily, you can see what it is. But this is the part that I really like, is this sort of rail structure here that connects to the center line. And so this one, maybe I'll isolate. Let's see. Yeah, like this one, it was this inset handle, and the little details, the little spindles here, I think were pretty cool. This one, just overall, is the level of detail in terms of lower versus higher, in terms of depth, structure, and just the way certain things feel like they're contained, like the latch here is kind of interesting. But again, I might not, want exactly this thing, but it's just some cool little details. This one, I did like this sort of hamburger, they call it the hamburger icons in Photoshop, but this kind of ladder-like structure, and then the LED lights and even some of the seam lines here were kind of cool. This one had a couple things. I really like this side. I'll actually show the whole thing on this guy. But yeah, I like the corner profile here. I think this had some interesting elements here, these little bevels and so forth, and a rounder kind of shape here, along with a square shape, and just the way the profile kind of changes, it goes in and out. And then I thought it was kind of cool for the buttons here and having, a different kind of latch system as a possibility. This one is definitely the X-Men kind of idea of like this. This is very popular in kind of militaristic kind of sci-fi examples. And then here just has a really good complexity of handle. Like the overall guy here is kind of blocky to my mind, but I think the handle bit here is really complex and kind of interesting. So those are the things to kind of think about. So we're going to get started here in Maya, and I think I'm just going to start off with a polygon cube, some of my poly modeling shelf here. Click on the poly cube here, and I'm going to hit the F key to kind of frame in on it. And I'm going to do this all in real time, so there's no speeding up of any kind. So these are going to be lots of tutorials that I'll have to post on YouTube. First thing I'm going to do is basically, change the size of this to get it a little bit more like rectangular. Now you can do that a couple different ways. You can go into the poly inputs here, and you can adjust directly in here. So I could click on here and width and height and adjust. You can also just use the scale tool and do the same thing. So you can see here, it's just adjusting it here versus here, but that history is being recorded. I just prefer to do the scale and just kind of, just because it's a little more interactive, I can kind of see it a little bit faster. And it's a little harder for my brain to kind of think, which one's the width, the height, the depth, etc. So as I go along here, I'm thinking, something like that might be good. Just kind of looking around here at the shape. Maybe a little bit longer. Might be kind of cool. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. I'm thinking, what if there's like attachments that kind of separate off or something? Like almost like the way was the Millennium Falcon in the Solo film, where part of it separated, or like in Star Trek, you know, the part of the ship from the Next Generation like popped off the front piece. I kind of like that idea. I'm thinking it might be kind of cool to have, for some reason, like an ejector sort of mechanism or some sort of separation between the end units and maybe the center piece. So maybe make it a little bit shorter, and then maybe having a duplicate piece on each side here. Now I could add some divisions here, but I think what I'm going to do is just basically duplicate this cube here by hitting Control D and just kind of move it over, just to have a placeholder, for example, here. Now I could scale this again by hitting the scale tool. Here's another way I kind of manipulate shapes very easy on, is just right click on the object and go into its individual components. And you got this little whip here, and I'm going to go into vertex mode and just drag over these vertices here and hit W, and then basically just drag in. It looks like, oh, I know why this didn't work. In the modeling toolkit here, I had this pick marquee selected, I believe, is the one that does that. It's basically, or no, it's not that. It's where is it here? Camera base selection on. So this value here, say I want to go into face mode, and I drag over it. You can see it's only selecting these faces and not the faces underneath. So if you turn off camera base selection off, when you drag through it like this, it'll go through all the way. So right now I have that turned off. So before I had it turned on. So I'm going to go to vertex mode. Again, just drag these verts here and basically just drag them in a little bit just to kind of get the shape, something like that. Maybe a little bit shorter. Yeah, that might be kind of cool. And then right click, go to object mode. And then to create another one over here, I can just mirror it across. So there are some cool mirroring options now. Under mesh, it's the mirror tool. And if I go and go to the options here, you can see here, you can mirror the object by its object orientation, which would be this. But you can do it in the world view right here. And right now this is the Z direction, so I can mirror it in the Z. And then it's the positive, so I want the negative. So when I click apply here, you can see it automatically pops over here. And that's kind of cool to be able to mirror objects directly across. And I feel like that's a pretty good example of a case. The last thing I'll do here is change shading to wireframe unshaded. I like to see my lines as I start to manipulate this. Now the next step, and I'm gonna think about this a little bit in the next tutorial, is like I can start to add some subdivisions. So I can add some width or some height, and you basically just drag across here and it goes through the whole thing, and some depth. But I'm gonna think about that a little bit before we continue on. But this is kind of a nice stopping point just to show the basic shape of whatever I'm gonna do. And I definitely have plenty of references to look at here, especially if I turn these little guys on real quick here, of all these little examples. So I have lots of references. You can even move them around afterwards. You don't have to have them all stacked. So I might end up doing that in the next tutorial, just show you kind of a one where I have these little pieces separate out in different areas. Until next time, see you soon. Cheers.